Hey everybody, it's Tim from Tadabase here, and this is Build It with Tim. On today's episode, we're going to talk about how you can use ChatGPT to help you build and design custom components inside of your Tadabase application. Now, I'm the first one to admit that I am not an expert web developer. Okay, I don't have any formal training whatsoever. Everything that I've learned along the way. Now, I know a little bit of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, enough to get me by. ChatGPT is a tool that I use pretty frequently to help me answer questions when it comes to custom code or low code solutions. Asking the right questions and feeding some database data into ChatGPT, we can get ChatGPT to build components for us inside of the database custom component, right? So today we are going to use ChatGPT in order to build some social media posts inside of a custom component so that you can be the web developer that you've always dreamed of. And so here's what we're dealing with. Inside of the data builder in our database application, you can see I have 3 social media posts stored inside of this data table. Now, I've collected all the information that I need in order to place that data on a social media post, but my problem is I don't have any way to actually display it as a social media post. I could use things like the list component and try to configure that to look somewhat similar, but what I want to use instead is the custom component. For those of you who are not familiar with the custom component, it allows us to create HTML templates with our own HTML, CSS, and JavaScript while retaining the native functionality of loading records from a particular data table. I'm going to add this custom component to this page, and we'll get started with asking ChatGPT our questions. We're going to choose the list type because we want to display all the records from this table, and the table that we want to display the records from is the social media posts. Right, now, when you add fields to the custom component, you're going to be shown the field IDs. We're going to use this information to tell ChatGPT which field is which. Now, one of the huge advantages to why we can use ChatGPT to help us with the custom component is the custom component uses a public library called handlebars.js. It allows us to do this templating style design when we're building out components. So I started by asking, using the following data, create an HTML component that looks exactly like an Instagram post. And what I was given back was an HTML document that contained both the CSS and the HTML that I needed. Okay, so I took this information and I copied it over into our templates. We're also going to grab the CSS here and paste it into the CSS tab. I'm going to go through this conversation now and show you along the way what roadblocks I hit and the questions that I asked in order to get past that particular roadblock. All right, now when I first previewed this page, I had a pretty decent result, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted. Now, the next thing that I asked was, can you add a section of this post that shows who liked it? Because we have fields inside of our data table that stores the users and also the user avatars of those who liked the post. So of course we get a response, but this time we now have a whole new set of CSS, and we're just going to kind of go back and forth here and just paste in the new values and see what we need to change next. You can see it added a couple lines here, so we update and save, and then we preview the page once again. Okay, so it's looking better now. We have some more information here at the bottom here, but again, we have all these words that I don't really want on the page. And I also am realizing now that we are feeding the custom component a comma separated string of usernames and also user avatars who liked it. So my next question was to how to handle that particular situation. I said, sorry, I should have mentioned that field 145 and 144, which are the users' avatars who like the post and the users' names who like the post, are actually comma separated strings with multiple values. All right, now here's what happened next. It gave me this information of this new section of HTML and this script that is intended to break apart the comma separated values. Now, I could try to take this and I could put it into the JavaScript tab here, but what I found is that it actually didn't work. Now, why didn't it work? If we go back into our custom component, we can see that we have these template helpers here called each liked and liked users. The problem is that those aren't actually real. One of the huge benefits of the custom component and using the handlebars JavaScript library is that we can register our own custom helpers. And we're going to use that system here in order to make a JavaScript function or a helper that gets those comma separated strings and breaks them apart into individual items. Now, that's way beyond me. I would never know how to do that, but ChatGPT does. So I referenced the Tadabase Help Center documentation for custom component, specifically writing your own custom component helpers. Okay, this is a format that is used by handlebars in order to register a helper. So I copied this and then I went back to ChatGPT and I said, I think I need to register that helper first. Here's an example of what I found. And I pasted in that example. ChatGPT recognized that, gave me a whole new set of information to try, including a new script where we are actually registering a helper that does exactly what we need, which is break apart the comma separated strings and create individual items. I'm just going to pause here for a moment before I go and paste all this stuff back into our custom component and show you what it looks like, just to kind of reiterate what's happened here. Now, we've hit a roadblock with the custom component. Now, specifically, we have data that's formatted in a specific way. Okay, we have comma separated strings inside of a particular field. Now, there is no predefined helper that lets me split those strings apart, but we can use the handlebars library to register our own helper. And because ChatGPT is familiar with this library, we can give it a small prompt, say, hey, here's an example of what it looks like to register a helper. Can you register this new helper? And of course, it does. So when I go to paste this information back in, I do need to reference that Help Center document a little bit more, where custom helpers that we are registering need to be defined on the page level JavaScript and not the custom component level JavaScript, because we need that helper to be registered before the custom component even loads. Okay, so there's still some tricky things going on here, but again, I don't know any of this stuff. I'm just asking ChatGPT and using the Tadabase documentation to help me with the right questions to ask. Okay, so we're going to take this information and go back to our builder, and we will then paste that particular helper into the page level JavaScript. And then it looks like we have some updated HTML that we have to use. So we are going to just copy the section that we need. You can see it kind of truncated here. So we'll just take this liked by section and go and replace the liked by section. You're going to see that these helpers from these kind of random helpers that ChatGPT first gave me is now going to use our custom helper that we have just asked it to help us create. Once we update that new information and preview the page once again, and it's just a constant back and forth of asking the right questions, getting the answer, pasting it into our custom component, and testing it, and then figure out what we need to ask next in order to get the result that we want. The next thing that we did with ChatGPT is we said, that's awesome. Could you please change two things? The liked section should not display the liked name, and the liked by avatar should be displayed in a single row with that kind of slight overlap like you see with social media posts. We get a new response with new information, and we just keep going back and forth. Right, so this conversation continued for a little while longer, where I just kept refining what I needed and asking new questions in order to make slight tweaks here and there. After a bunch of back and forth with ChatGPT, we finally have a version of a finished product. Okay, previewing what we have at the very end of that conversation, you can see that we have now what looks like a more refined and more realistic product with all of the changes that we made along the way, including registering that custom helper. Again, that was something that was actually kind of unknown to me for a little while until recently, when I needed a function that didn't exist inside of the current library of custom component helpers. All right, Tadabase has a ton of helpers that you can use to help you format the data that you're displaying in the custom component. But if you need to create your own custom helper and you're not familiar with JavaScript, then please leverage ChatGPT and you'll get amazing results. Right, so that's how you can use ChatGPT to start building and designing beautiful components using the Tadabase custom component. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.